Hello and welcome. This is the Goal is AFL Podcast, and today we are going to be wrapping up round 3 and doing a little preview of round 4 of the 2025 AFL football season. We are well into the swing of things. It does not yet feel like footy weather. I'm going to say there's been a fair amount of hot weather here in Brisbane. There's been a fair amount of hot weather in Melbourne, some wild weather around the country, postponements. Finally playing the games that we were supposed to be playing earlier on in the season in the round 0. So making up for lost time, so to speak. And we're going to get cracking right into it with Mr. Caleb right up here. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Happy to be back, talking some footy. And first game up of the round 3 was Essendon and Port Adelaide, and both these teams were very desperate for a win, would you say?
Definitely a game that both of these teams desperately needed to win, and unfortunately only one of them could win it, and Essendon eventually did get the win, with a very inaccurate scoreline right there of 72 points total with 9 goals, 18 points. Port Adelaide also a little bit wayward. It was a very tight tussle with Port obviously having the lead for a lot of the game, but Essendon clawing their way back in very, very nice fashion. I don't know if you watched much of this game, Caleb, but man, it was definitely a tight tussle and a game that, as I said, both teams desperately needed to win. And eventually Essendon got it. So yeah, they're looking okay. Your prediction of them finishing at the top, they looked all right.
This game illustrated to me what Essendon Football Club is capable of. They played some really exciting, dynamic footy. There's got so many players in their forward line that are, dynamite. When the ball hits ground and they've got to get the crumbs and get it into the big sticks. And then obviously, big Sammy Draper with his, around the body set shot routine gets everyone excited. So there is potential at Essendon. I've been saying it for many, many weeks now, but it's just about getting results. And it's so important to, you can walk the walk, but you've got to talk the talk as well. Mm-hmm. And Essendon and Port Adelaide, in my opinion at least, are two clubs that are similar in stature. They've got great prestige, awesome fan bases that really rally behind their team. But at the same time, they haven't yet accomplish the highs that the football club is so desperate for. Yeah. And that's why I agree with what you were saying earlier about this game just felt like they had an extra element of PR to it, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I was rooting for Essendon to win, and I'm very glad that they did.
Yeah, there's. I spoke to an Essendon friend while the game was happening, and he said, this is one of the first times that I feel like I've enjoyed watching my team play. Not only for the kind of, that they won, but just like the kind of aesthetic that they play with was, I know they had an attacking style over the last few years, but he felt like they had a more balanced team, especially on this Thursday night. So no, good on Essendon there. It was definitely a good win, but we move on to the Friday night game, which was the Carlton Football Club, unfortunately, losing their third straight game. We are the Navy Blues. We are 0-3 versus the resurgent Bulldogs, who have got to be said, without some of their stars, have been playing rather well. They've got some good contributions from a lot of their young players. They've got some really good players like Sam Darcy, Rory Lobbs playing very well, and they have, I don't know if this is going to be a good win in the context of the season. We'll have to see how well Carlton finish. I still think they've got some fire left in the tank, but yeah,
but their
not
next
looking
game's
good.
Against Collingwood. So if they go 0-4 to start the season, just bloody hell.
Their next game is against Collingwood on Thursday night at the G. 90,000 plus going to be there. It's going to be insane.
That's going to be a blockbuster.
But yeah, there's been a lot of backlash against Carlton, and you literally couldn't really ask for a worse start given the expectation. Yeah. It's tough because, the Lions were 0-3 last year, and people would have written them off.
100%.
And it's a long season, but man, it's really hard, and the statistics and the form doesn't favour a team that has started the season like this. So it's going to be tough, but
Do Carlton have a heap of injuries still? Like, I know Curnow missed the first game, but he's back now.
But I mean, they still
Like,
have
they don't
a
have
lot
a
of their
huge stack of injuries, right?
not a huge amount. I mean, they did lose a couple of young players like Jagger Smith to the start of the season there, but no, they've got a lot of their main star players in the team. You know, they've got a tall key forward in Harry Mackay. They got the All Australian fullback. They got the Brownlow medalist. You know, all that sort of thing is going on in their team, and they just can't seem to make it happen.
Up.
Yeah, it's just listless. It's lifeless kind of play, and it's just not a good time to be a Carlton fan. But then over the last 10 years, there hasn't really been that many good times to be a Carlton fan. Sorry to pile on Carlton fans, but you know, I mean, you just look at the worm of this game. You had a fairly good lead throughout most of this game, and then all of a sudden, right at the end, it was good night, Charlie here. Over right at the end, the Bulldogs managed to get the win right at the end, and you could almost see it coming a little bit. It's funny how we'll skip it ahead. Obviously, we'll get to the Lions, but it felt like when the Lions went down a little bit, I didn't have that panic. Whereas I think the reverse is for Carlton. When they get a lead, the Carlton fans have a little bit of panic.
Start pulling their hair out.
Because they're like, how are we going to blow this one? Because they have no faith. So I had faith that the team like the Lions, because we have kind of seen them do it before, and in the opposite way, the Carlton fans have faith that they're going to blow it in some way.
That's a great analysis. That's so spot on. I didn't even think about it, but I agree.
I think that it's going to be a tough year if they don't straighten themselves out over the next few weeks. But yeah, Carlton. Mm-hmm. Any words on the Bulldogs? Any thoughts on their performance for this game?
Not really. I was going to say, I still am undecided about who they are as a team and are they a formidable threat. I still see them as a potential contender floating just outside the 8. They've got good players. Beveridge as a coach is respected and deserves to be in the job, but I just don't see the Doggies as a team that are formidable compared to some of the others in the competition. So I'm still in that opinion as of right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, again, we'll see how they finish up. They're still going to get some very key players back from injuries. And, if they bank some wins without those players, then they could be one of those teams that kind of sneaks into the 8. That's what I see. I don't see a top 4, but around the 8, just there or thereabouts.
Absolutely.
The next game was a cracking game at the MCG.
I loved this game, Harry.
This was
so good.
This is a really good game. This was kind of happening while we were getting ready for the Lions game, and Melbourne got trounced. Let's just say that. They got beaten up pretty badly by the Gold Coast Suns, who played their only game at Melbourne, at the MCG, sorry, I should say, for the entire year. They led basically from wire to wire. It's kind of odd that GWS played their first game against Melbourne at the MCG, and that's their only MCG game. And then Gold Coast, it's their only MCG game for the whole year. It's kind of nuts that these interstate teams, I know they obviously play half of their games at home, but, if the MCG is, the home of the grand final, it's the home of football, and these teams like GWS and Gold Coast never get to play there, it's a little bit wild. The Lions only play there twice this year, so...
Yeah, I think that's weird that the Premiers have far less games at the MCG. Like, that to me is a bit strange, but I feel like playing in front of a big crowd at the MCG is something you have to earn as an interstate team.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the Lions have definitely earned that. Like, they've got such a great supporter base in Fitzroy, and we can get a decent turnout out there. But the fact that GWS beat the D's at the MCG in their only game there, and the Suns go to the G and absolutely demolish them. Like, to me, like, that is just a sad reflection of where the Melbourne Football Club is at the moment, because the Gold Coast Suns have got off to such a great start, bit disrupted in terms of Cyclone Alfred and their preseason and whatnot. But the fact that, Damien Hardwick has implemented his style, in the first season, gone through trials and errors, he's recruited, in my opinion, very smartly, especially with Rioli on the halfback flank now. And, he's got players like Matt Rao who are really stepping up.
Yeah, it was great.
I think this is the year of the Gold Coast Suns, Harry. I reckon they're going to make the 8.
I'm not gonna say whether or not they're the real deal. I'm sorry, I just can't do it yet. I just can't. Who have they played? They've played West Coast and they've played the Demons. Like, come on, like who are we? What are we talking about here?
Yes, but but these are the games where you still got to prove a point. Like if they won against the Eagles and they won against the Demons by like 10 or 20 points, then you'd be like, what is this Gold Coast team? But these performances where you do win comfortably show that you have enough under the bonnet to actually get the job done. Like you said, I agree. You've got to come up against real competitors like Geelong and Brisbane and prove your weight in gold against those opponents. But in terms of what they have at their disposal in terms of talent across the park and their play style and quick movement, kick-to-kick football, I'm really liking what I'm seeing under hard work so far.
Okay, all right. I'll take your word for it. Good to start the season, and we'll see how they go when they play a real team like the Lions or the Cats or something like that. So we'll get onto those teams later on in the episode. But the next game that was on this slate for Saturday, Super Saturday, I should say, was the St Kilda Saints smashing Richmond by, what was that, 82 points. Man, that's a lot. But Richmond, I mean, they are who we thought they were. Not that anyone really thought anything from the Carlton game, but man, they looked young, they looked inexperienced, and the Saints basically ran all over them from the start.
But doesn't that just make the Carlton game even more tragic? Like the fact that this is exactly what we expected, and somehow they beat Carlton.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, you'll look back on that, and even if that is their only win for the season, I think Richmond fans will be like, well, it is what it is, but that was fun for one game. I don't think I don't think it's going to be their only win for the season. I think they will win another game or two. There are some pretty terrible teams out there like West Coast who didn't do very well. Melbourne again didn't look very good, so they will get another win, especially say on like a packed Friday night or Saturday afternoon at the G, like that sort of home crooking, home crowd sort of thing will help them get over the line for another win. But yeah, Richmond, another, rebuilding kind of game that they can put more miles into their young players. Do we think we know anything more about the Saints after this game?
No. Not willing to make any different verdict here.
Okay.
The bigger headline obviously was beating Geelong last week. But again, against Richmond, there's not really much you can take away from. Like, they should be winning this game, and they should be winning it comfortably. Not surprised. You take the 4 points, you move on.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a percentage booster, so to speak. And guess who's got Richmond next week?
Brisbane, right?
Brisbane. So hopefully we can
bloody oath.
push that percentage up a little bit. So how funny would it be if we... No, I'm not even going to say it. Sorry, I can't say it. I can't say it.
Well, I would like to get that. I would like to get that top spot back off Hawthorn with a convincing percentage boosting performance. So that is for certain.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Hawthorn, great segue. Speaking of Hawthorn, they went and down to Launceston, their adopted home down in Tasmania, and versus the GWS Giants, and they not very comfortably beat them. I was going to say that. Let me have a look at the worm here, because it was pretty seesawing, because the Giants had a good lead for a little bit, and then they clawed it back, and then they were pretty tight for a while, and the Hawks just kind of kicked away at the end. But yeah, I think it was 35-2 at quarter time. 37-2, 35-point lead. So yeah, it was a wild affair, and apparently this was the same game that was going on with the Lions, so didn't get to watch it with the sound on, but I saw clips where there was a huge amount of wind favoring one end, and for a while there, that was the only end that was getting goals scored. So
that sounds like Tassie.
It looked cold. It looked like proper footy weather. I wish some of that would come here. But yeah, it was a great game, and Hawthorn, man, yeah. What do we think about Hawthorn so far?
Well, I'll say they are proving very much so to be a formidable outfit. I can't say I'm surprised, because I expected them to be very good. But to have 4 wins on the bounce, it's very, very respectable. And at the end of the day, what you've got to do is you've got to prove your consistency over a long period of time. And it's still early days, like you could lose 2 or 3 in a row and then the narrative changes very, very quickly. But they've got so many exciting players. I unfortunately didn't get to watch this game because my attention was on the Lions.
Yeah.
So seeing that worm for the first time is shocking to me that GWS coughed up that many points of a lead. But yeah, I'm not surprised that Hawthorn are doing well, and I'm also not surprised that GWS are not the formidable threat that everyone in AFL media punditry said that they would be. So,
I wonder why this game came up against the prelim final from last year. I'm not sure that the scheduling. I feel like this game could have been the game that started at 4 o'clock our time, like the game before the night windows, and then put St Kilda and Richmond up against the Lions Cats game. You know what I mean? Like that was a bit of an odd. That was a bit of an odd scheduling thing. It felt like this was like, even before the season, you could have predicted that this would have been a great game, and they didn't put it as a standalone. So both games were pretty tight, and trying to flick between both games would have been very hard as well because they started the games at the same time. And I keep saying that the AFL needs to make these games staggered. So if one starts at 6:30, start the next one at, say, 6:45. Just as an example, 15-minute window, just to split it up so that when a team goes to quarter time, you're not also at quarter time on the other game. So you can switch from one to the other if that's how you're viewing it. You know what I mean? Like if you're just a casual fan or a non-supporting that team that you're watching fan, you can just switch between the two and just watch footy all night instead of having to sit through ads. And maybe it's by design, but yeah, it's felt a bit weird.
Yeah,
to me.
I get what you're saying. I have a little bit of sympathy with the AFL for this specific case because obviously the Lions and the Cats were meant to be played, a couple of weeks ago. So in terms of just squeezing this into the fixture, I can understand the complexities of that. But as a general rule of thumb, I do agree with what you're saying.
I just think the time could have been changed. If it was two and a bit weeks out and you saw that they were they moved this rescheduled game pretty quickly, they could have just bumped the times up and down. Anyway, I know logistics for AFL games is tough. But yeah, this one was a great game, and I wish that more people probably could have seen it. So good on the Hawks. Giants, they'll still be up there. Don't take any, loss. Don't take any shame from this loss. So that was a great game. But the other game that we are probably going to talk the most about, because we were literally at the game, we watched the entire thing, was the Lions defeating the Geelong Cats 70-61. This was a very, very back and forth affair with a fair little lead for the Cats towards the halftime. I think it was 24 points at halftime, and it got out to, I think we kicked a goal late but just before half. It was about 35 points, I think, at one point in the second quarter, and then we clawed back 1 or 2. So yeah, it wasn't looking good. I don't know what your feelings were, but man, it was not looking good. But again, like I said before, there was a little bit of a sense of we've got this in a way. Like we can come back. Don't know if we will, but I know we are. I know we are capable of it. You know what I mean? So, what was your feeling?
Well, I think what Chris Fagan said in his post-match presser, I think pretty much summarized this game perfectly, in my opinion. All week, Brisbane in training were practicing wet weather footy because it was, wet and drizzly. And the conditions were looking like it was going to be the same for game day. So they had prepared a certain style of play to be scrappy, long balls down the line, getting contests, scrummers doing their job. And that's how the first half played out. And the Cats just were able to control the football and actually get marks inside 50 and get shots on goal far easier than we did.
Yeah.
By halftime, Fagan said, let's change things up. It's not going to rain anymore. Let's just play dry, proper footy. And that's when Brisbane started playing more kick mark, possession football, being more direct and more risk-taking as we normally do with, passes into the corridor and more direct pass towards goal. And when we started upping the tempo with our play style, it just made us so much more difficult to defend against, and the Cats just couldn't hold on. And
Yeah.
we've got so much talent at our disposal. You've got Hugh McCluggage, who's amazing in midfield. You've got Lockie Neal, who played a little bit of full forward as well, just to throw things in the mix, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the two Ashcroft brothers that are, making a name for themselves, stepping out of their dad's legacy and really shining in the AFL light, that's for sure. And the fact that they were able to get the victory in a unconvincing fashion, but a victory nonetheless, is extremely commendable against what I still think is a Geelong outfit that is very, very good.
Yeah, you just spoke about Levi Ashcroft, and man, he was very good. He looks AFL ready in not only his physicality but his mental processes, his IQ, taking marks in open play and not losing his head and perhaps trying to fend off players or think that you're better than him by trying to don't argue or push off or anything. He's just taking his time, tries to make the right decision, and just kind of it was really exciting to see him as well, especially kick his first goal in AFL football. Same with Bruce Reville, as I like to call.
Yes, that was so good.
As I like to call him, the coffee maker.
Yeah.
Or the toasty. Some people, if people know the brand of toasty maker we have in Australia called Breville, it makes me laugh. That's a bit of an inside joke, but yeah, Bruce was ringing around the Gabba
I love
a fair
having
few
to explain
times.
to people who don't understand what it is either.
Yeah.
Like people be like, "Why is everyone booing?" And I'm like, "No.
Bruce.
They are saying Bruce," and I don't know how he feels about it, but
he loves it.
It must be such a surreal feeling to just know that you've got 35,000, Lions fans at your back, just fully in love with everything you do when you are moving the ball forward and kicking a goal, and having your goal song being Queen's "We Will Rock You" was so unexpected, but I just loved it so much. It was awesome.
Same with Zorko. I can't remember what his goal song was, but it was a bit unexpected too because we never get to hear them. So it was. When you hear Country Roads and Let It Go 10 times a game. But yeah, your tip for Levi Ashcroft being the Rising Star winner is looking pretty good. I'm not going to lie. He looks to fit into a premiership team like that for a first-year player is pretty
insane.
rare.
And it really is.
And I hope that he doesn't lose any of that just because he's not getting a huge amount of stats. I hope that they don't look at that. And I just think that he's really, really good. And we're going to get some players back from injury, hopefully later on in the season. Not a huge amount of forwards coming back, so we're kind of stuck there with what we've got, unless we try and make a trade or something. But yeah, it's not looking incredible in that way. But we're still scoring lots of goals, so we'll see what it is. But yeah, let's talk about Geelong as well. They looked really, really good. It's just the play style was a bit scrappy, it was a bit wet. It was just an interesting sort of game for them. They kept chipping away, but I feel like if this game was at the MCG or at the Geelong Stadium, they probably would have won in this conditions. It's just, I think it was just the home ground advantage. But yeah, that was kind of. Any other takeaways from that game? I think we've held on to our thoughts from that game for a long time.
No, I've said my piece.
Nice. I think that the Worm tells a good story, good lead for Geelong, and then the Lions come back, and 3-0 for the Lions. There you go. Premiership defence off to a very good start. The next game that I want to talk about is the Adelaide Crows demolishing. Oh, is that the right word? Demolishing North Melbourne. It felt like this.
I wouldn't say that. No,
I felt like
I watched this game and it was actually pretty even. For the most part, if you want to bring up the Worm, I'm actually interested to see the visual representation of this game because, when you look at that, it does look like Adelaide were comfortable the whole time. But I would describe this game as a momentum swing because Adelaide got a couple of goals on the board and then North Melbourne played some really good footy and got some goals back themselves. And it was like that a lot. So from a neutral's perspective, watching it, it was really entertaining seeing North Melbourne play some really exciting football and constantly, raising questions to the Adelaide defense and, often coming up with good answers. But as you can kind of see towards the third quarter and onwards, Adelaide were just able to capitalize on their scoring opportunities, whereas North Melbourne were not. Every time they went forward, they made mistakes. They didn't get the mark, or they made the wrong pass, whereas Adelaide didn't. They used the home crowd to their advantage, which was absolutely buzzing, and they did kick away. And the scoreline probably looks, more favorable than what it was, like 36 points. That's a solid margin of victory. But in terms of the actual gameplay itself, if I was Alistair Clarkson, I'd be very, very pleased with what I've seen.
Yeah, I think that this I saw a stat that North Melbourne led the league last year in 5-goal runs, as in against them. So they gave up a lot of, lots of goals in a row. And I think this year they've kind of tried to address that. And when a team does start to feel the momentum, they try to do everything they can to try and pull it back and try and, stop that momentum, which is, it's hard to do. And you've got to have good players.
Especially Adelaide Oval.
Yeah. So I think that they've brought in a few good kind of older players who have helped them to learn how to address that. And my pick for Coleman medal, Nick Larkey, kicked another 4 goals. He's up to 12 for the year. So, that's looking pretty good. It's exciting to see North being competitive, not just rolling over as they have done. I still think they'll miss the finals. I still think they'll probably be in the maybe 13, 12 range. If they finished 13th, man, they'd probably be stoked with that. So,
Yeah, probably.
But yeah,
anything that's not the wooden spoon, I feel like they'll be happy with, to be honest.
I don't think they'll get that. So yeah, that was the game over in Adelaide for this round. And then the last game was over in Perth, which was the Freo Dockers defeating the Eagles in the West Coast Perth derby, whatever you want to call it, 106-68. The Dockers winning this game and finally getting on the board for 2025. Yeah, the Eagles, again, another loss, 0-3. Showed a little bit of fight last week, but, not much fight this game. A little bit of, to and fro in the first quarter, but yeah, Dockers pretty much held the lead pretty comfortably for the rest of the whole game. So, yeah, I don't really have that much thoughts about this, to be honest. It was kind of...
I don't either. It was a very dull game.
It was a bit of a dull game. You watched it. I didn't actually get to watch it. I was away from home for this one, and I was following the score pretty intently, but I wasn't able to watch it. I did see a lot of West Coast fans doing the Harley Reid middle finger thing.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, what else do they have to kind of? What else do they? What else do they have to do? What else do they have to celebrate besides something that one of their players did? So, anyway, another season it seems will be lost for the Eagles. Dockers finally getting on the board. It's going to be an interesting kind of to see how they back up this game. We'll have a look in a second as to who they are playing in the next round. But yeah, Dockers finally getting a win and getting off the mark in 2025. Any other thoughts for this game, Caleb?
I was just going to say Caleb Sarong was best on ground, and he's won that award 4 times now, which makes him the equal highest amount of times winning that award. So that
for the West Coast Derby.
Yeah. The Glenn, I don't know how to say it. Glending Allen Medal.
Glendenning,
if that's right. He's won it 4 times, and that's the equal highest that it's been won by a single player. So that is pretty commendable. 35 disposals. So again, we'll talk about our votes a little bit later, but he was also another contender that we could have thrown into the mix. But definitely a very solid performance from him.
Well, we can chat about the votes right now. I think the 3 votes for me went to Matt Rowell, coming back to Melbourne for almost like a homecoming type game. Had a lot of family, friends there. He's from Melbourne, so coming back to play the one game of the year at the MCG. He was outstanding. We also put 2 votes for Tom Liberatore, who had an incredible game. His AFL fantasy points were actually the highest of the entire season. He had like 147, which is pretty incredible. So that's a combination of like efficiency and tackling and pressure, and had over 30 disposals as well. So a great game by him, and obviously getting the win as well in comeback fashion against the Blues was very, very good. And then 1 vote went to Will Ashcroft, who, he was an incredible force for the Lions for that game. And he was man, he said it was his best game. Fagan said it was his best game. If you say that and you've won a Norm Smith medal, like
that's pretty crazy.
That's pretty crazy that is your best game. So those are our 3, 2, and 1. I think as we get further along in the year, we'll start to put together the actual, I guess, who is leading our mini sort of competition, because I think we've only had 2 players who have gotten votes in multiple rounds so far. So I think as we solidify towards the end of the year, we'll have a clearer picture of who's going to win that. But yeah, we're going to have a look at who is playing each other in the next week's games, which is obviously round 4. Kicking us off on Thursday is Collingwood and Carlton. Oh, who's going to win this one?
I don't
It's really hard for me to
Probably
pick.
Collingwood.
It's really hard for me to pick
I wouldn't
anyone
be
but
surprised
Collingwood.
if Carlton show up. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
if Carlton goes 0-4 to start the season, the fan base is just going to go absolutely crazy.
I think it depends
the
how
wheels
they
off
lose.
the bus will be 100% the headline moving into the week. That's for sure.
Actually, I'm not even going to... Actually, I take that back. It's not going to be how they lose. It's just if they lose. Because if they have a lead and they blow it again, there's going to be hell to pay. If they lose by 50, there's going to be hell to pay. If they lose by 1 point, it's going to be, terrible. So,
yeah,
I think if they...
It's a must-win game. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
But I'll say Collingwood.
But also Collingwood really want to win this game too. So, they're 2-1. They want to keep their momentum. So they had a bye last week. So nice and rested. I think Collingwood's got to win this one. The next game on Friday is Geelong versus Melbourne. I think the Geelong might win this by 80. I think there's really no doubt in that one. This next game also on Saturday afternoon, first game on the Gold Coast at People's First Stadium is Gold Coast versus Adelaide Crows. And yeah, this might actually be one of the best games of the round. Like, it's kind of wild to say that, isn't it? Like,
these are 2 of those teams that are like, I think, equal in ability.
Yeah.
Got some really exciting football, quality players, 2 coaches that have something to prove, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. This could be the game of the round. In saying that, like, if this becomes a blowout and one of these teams wins comfortably, I would be severely disappointed. I want to see a close contest decided by maybe a couple points and coming out of it being like, wow, this team is something to keep an eye on for the rest of the year. And
it's the first game for Gold Coast at their home stadium, like I said before, so we'll see how that works out for them. Adelaide, going to be a good game. We are definitely looking forward to seeing that one. And then the 3:15 game, Brisbane time, is going to be Richmond versus the Brisbane Lions, and hopefully the Brisbane Lions win by over 100. Get that?
Yep, they will.
Get that, boost of percentage and a nice win there. I think that's going to be pretty solid. North Melbourne.
I hope it's a demolition job.
The next game is at Marvel. North Melbourne versus Sydney. That'll be a good game. Again, I think North playing at home hopefully will show some more improvement. Sydney, coming off a bye last week, will want to continue on that win they had at Freo. So yeah, they're going to be, I think they're 1-2 on the season. So Sydney want to get another win here. Who am I going to pick?
I back Sydney as well.
I think it's going to have... Nah. Oh, man.
Oh, are you not decided? Do you reckon North Melbourne might get up there?
I think North Melbourne. I'm going to pick them. I'm going to continue on the North Melbourne train. So I'm going to pick them.
Interesting.
The next game we have is at MG Stadium, which is GWS versus West Coast Eagles. I think this is a pretty clear win for the Giants.
Yeah.
Don't think there's any real controversy about saying that. The next one is Port Adelaide versus St Kilda on Sunday afternoon. This is got to be a bounce back game, I think. Saints coming off a couple good wins. I just think they're going to fall back down to earth a little bit here. This is their second trip already in 4 games to Adelaide, which is an interesting proposition for them. So they'll be a little bit familiar with the ground and the trip. But I just think the Port will come back a little bit stronger from last week against Essendon. And yeah, I think the Port's going to get the win here. Have I picked all home? No, I haven't picked all home teams. Nearly. I tend to do that. I don't know why, but I tend to pick home teams. So there's probably going to be a couple wrong here. But the last game, of course, who else? It's going to be a Sunday West Coast game. Sorry, Perth game on the West Coast. It's going to be Freo versus Western Bulldogs. And this is going to be... There's a hard one to pick, actually. I don't know. You go first. I can't pick that one.
I'll say... That is a tough one. I'll say the Doggies. I think it'll be a close game, but I reckon the Dogs will be able to get over the line, I reckon. I don't say that with any confidence.
I think I'm gonna pick Freo. I think I'm just gonna have to pick Freo to go 2-2 to kind of keep the season chugging along. I'm gonna pick Freo there. Of course, that leaves out Bombers and Hawks, who are now on a bye. And yeah, continuing this whole bye thing, like it feels so weird to have, 2 teams on byes every week for the first, 4 rounds. It's like, plus opening round. It's just a bit odd. Get rid of opening round.
It's going to get even worse when Tasmania comes into the competition and we have an odd number of teams in the league.
Yeah.
So just embrace it, Harry. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, this is the last one before the actual byes happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like the proper byes were in the mid-season. So anyway, we were going to have a full slate of games next week. The week after this game. So round 5 will be the full slate. But yeah, round 4 looking exciting. Carlton Collingwood, that's a good game. Suns Crows, good game. Hopefully Lions get a good easy win over there at the MCG. The first MCG game for them, 1 of 2. Yeah, it's exciting. It's just good to have footy back. I'm excited. Thanks for joining me, Caleb. Any other thoughts before we head off for the night?
Nah, done and dusted.
Done and dusted. Well, thank you so much to everybody for joining us. We had some great response to the last episode, so I really do appreciate everyone for tuning in. I know that this, can become a part of your weekly routine. Hopefully that they enjoy listening to us do a little wrap up of the footy and having our own perspectives on the sport and our own takes. So thank you so much to everybody for watching. You can tune in next week where we'll be wrapping up round 4 of the AFL. Have a good night.